So, welcome to the first episode of 15 Minutes of Mental Health Check-In. I'm just going to talk to you about a small thing. My name is Yvette Myers, and I am a mental health counselor. Just a couple of topics that are going to come that I'll bring up. I'll tell you about them. I hope that you can use them. If you can't, pass them on. I encourage you to like, share, and follow my YouTube channel at Better Health 23. Okay, today's first topic is triggers. Triggers are those things that can get us to go from 0 to 100 like that. Triggers are those things that we can be walking around and just minding our own business. Something can happen. You can hear music from your high school years in the grocery store, and immediately you transform or transpose into that position of being a 16-year-old. I remember walking through the grocery store and hearing Summertime by Will Smith, and I remember being 15, 16 years old in Miami, Florida. So those are triggers. Those are the things that as soon as you hear it, it snaps you back to a time where you can either remember. Those triggers can also put you in a bad place. Someone can say something, or you can have a traumatic event in your life. Someone can say something and a trigger can put you back into that place, and you can go from, happy-go-lucky, excited, laughing and having fun, to explosive. It is our responsibility. Each person has their own responsibility to identify what their triggers are and to be able to minimize their reaction towards those triggers, especially if it's dangerous, or if it puts yourself in harm or others in harm. A trigger is something that's very small. When you don't know your triggers, when you don't know what gets you excited, when you don't know what triggers your anger, it makes you vulnerable. You become very vulnerable to your surroundings, and you become a puppet to whatever someone says or does. In the climate that we're in today, someone can say something as small as the debate of Black Lives Matters versus All Lives Matters. That's a trigger for some, and it makes some feel as if they're inferior, and then it makes some feel like they're being left out. And so that's a trigger for both parties. So knowing what your triggers are and putting yourself in a position to minimize your reaction towards your triggers is your responsibility. Let me say that again. That's your responsibility. You are responsible for minimizing your triggers, for your explosive behavior. You are responsible. If someone does something and you respond, you did not respond because they did what they did. You responded because either that's what you chose to do, or your coping skills and your toolbox is very, very limited. And though the only response mechanisms that you have in your coping box is anger, explosive behaviors, fussing, cussing, yelling, or whatever. When I was in school, I heard a professor say, if your toolbox is limited, it's important, very important, that you have many tools in your toolbox in dealing with everything that's going on in your life. If your only tool in your toolbox is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and you will bang the heck out of everything. And some things need to be, torqued, or some things need to be put back together. But because your tools are limited, your explosiveness and anger is your response. If you don't know your triggers, you become explosive, and we're not going to even mention what you're doing to your heart. One of the things that you can do when you're experiencing triggers is, I put myself on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 is everything is good. Life is grand. There's rainbows, the butterflies, the mist in the air. 10 is somebody going in a body bag. So that's for Yvette. 1 is good. 10 is somebody's going in a body bag. If I find myself getting to a 4, 5, or 6, I'm going in the wrong direction. I immediately start figuring out a way to remove myself from the situation. That's for me. I have to figure out a way to get myself out of that situation. So I don't wait till I get to a 10, because I know that I can become very angry. So I minimize my reaction towards foolishness. I minimize my exposure towards foolishness. I minimize my exposure towards my triggers. I minimize my exposure towards anybody or anything that gets me excited to the point that I'm ready to put somebody in a body bag. That's my responsibility. And I do that as long as I have the ability to do that. If I get jammed up in a corner, then I can't be responsible. Please don't walk away from here and say, Yvette said if I get jammed. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying I am responsible for that. And because I'm responsible for that, I take that very, 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 that's a very important thing to me. When you find yourself, if I find myself going towards 4, 5, 6, I stopped. And the acronyms for stop is one, S-T-O-P, stop. S is stop. Just take a deep breath. Now, when we get excited, our heart rate increases, our breathing gets shallow, and the oxygen leaves our brain and goes to our muscles. We are moving into a primitive state, into a fight, flight, or freeze. So, if you are into a reactionary state, it is difficult for you to think. You're going to react to what's going on versus assessing and seeing if there's really a danger. So you have to stop. If I find myself getting to a 4, 5, or 6, I stop. Take a deep breath. Get that oxygen back to my brain. Observe. Look around me. Is this a real threat or am I just pissed off? Is it a real threat? Observe. Or perceived threat. And then P, proceed with caution. If it's a real threat, then address just accordingly. If it's a perceived threat, then that means that somebody's feelings are either hurt or the situation got out of control or something. Stop. Stop. Take a deep breath. Observe. Proceed. And that's triggers. I thought there was more. It's not. And that's triggers. This is only 15 minutes of mental health. I want you guys to take the time to develop the person that you want people to remember. It is time now to develop ourselves. Take the time to develop the person that you want people to remember. Know what your triggers are. Know how to get yourself out of bad situations and move accordingly. Thank you for joining me. You can reach me on my website at www.betterdecisionsbetterhealth.com. You can contact me on that website. You can also like, subscribe, and share. Thanks so much. Have a good one.